Good afternoon, and welcome to Smithsonian Gardens Let's Talk Gardens, a weekly webinar series where we inform you about all things gardening. We try to help you turn your thumb green, but also bring some very important topics to light. Today is one of those days. We're not talking about gardening per se, we're talking about gardening how it can help different communities and how you can help it be available to different communities. So we have with us today Casey Yulteraldi and Watani Hatcher, and they'll both be our presenters. They are going to talk to you about their special community projects that they've been working on. My name is Cindy Brown. I am the Manager of Education and Collections, and we are so glad that you could come today for this special discussion. I will turn it over to the speakers, but first, before I do, I want to let you know how we got involved with these two wonderful people. So I don't know how many of you have explored our website, but we have a resource available called Plant Explorer. We have a true Smithsonian collection, a tree collection, that spread about the entire campus. So we keep track of all those trees, and we have listed them in Plant Explorer. In that listing, we give resources about that tree. It's a great resource, and you can feel like you're walking along the campus when you go to Plant Explorer and see what trees are available. Well, Casey has worked on this project, and I won't give away the project, but she contacted us because she saw this resource. And she said, you know what, this would really help me out with my project. And we were very glad to share it with her and very glad to help participate in her project. And that's the point of the discussion today. Many of us do not have enough resources with funds, with both labor and money, but we have other resources that are available that we can share with our local community to help out with projects and help make these green spaces and gardens and garden plots more accessible to the entire community. So keep that in mind when you're listening to Casey's and Watani's projects, and see if there's something you can glean from these projects that would help your community be more successful in gardens and green spaces. So Casey and Watani, I am going to disappear. When you introduce yourself, please tell who you are, of course, but then how did you get into this field that you're working in now? What was your passion that led you to work in this field? After both of your presentations, I will come back on and I will start to ask you the questions that are in the chat box. So that is a reminder to you in the audience, if you have a question, please post it in the chat box and I will share it with our speakers at the end of the presentations. Thank you both. And Casey, would you like to start us out?
Sure, thank you. Okay, I'm going to find my presentation. Okay, so thank you so much for inviting me. I'm very excited. I love the Smithsonian. My name is Casey Yulteraldi. I'm the Forest Health and Community Outreach Specialist with the Urban Forestry Division. This is part of the District Department of Transportation. And our mission is to keep the urban tree canopy healthy, safe, and growing. And we work to ensure that these resources are equally available across the city. And so today I'll be talking about how we've been helping communities in the city gain access and kind of encourage access to green spaces within the past year. And so when you think trees in the city in Washington, D.C., you probably envision something like this. And these are cherry blossoms at the tidal basin. As a resident here, you know, we love these trees. But some people might not know that this is just one part of our urban forest. So our urban forest is also distributed across the city. It consists of street trees, which you see here, and then also trees publicly owned trees in parks and schools, and privately owned trees. And for our group, we are tasked with taking care of the publicly owned trees. So we directly manage street trees that you see here between the curb and the sidewalk, and then also trees on school and park property. And we indirectly manage privately owned trees across the city through our urban tree law, our preservation law, and then also through our emergency response. And so if there's ever a tree emergency, we respond to those as well. And among our street trees, we have 160,000 trees that we are managing, and about 20,000 more that are found on the park and school properties. And you'll also find a lot of beautiful cherry trees across the city in parks and in your neighborhoods. So this is an example of a really beautiful grove. This is actually part of a 9/11 Memorial Grove at Langdon Park in Ward 5. And so we have a great diversity of trees in the city. We have over 100 different species of trees. And so this is a nice example from Oxon Run Park. This is a park in Ward 8, and I'll be talking about it quite a bit in this presentation. And this is a really beautiful park. They have a great collection of sweet gum trees. You can see those tall trees, and then a lot of nice flowering trees. You have a lot of red buds that you can see there in the bright purple. And of course, we do have cherry blossom trees all across the city. And these are all publicly owned cherry trees. And so in this past year, there was concern about people congregating in large crowds at the tidal basin for the Cherry Blossom Festival. And so we wanted to make sure that people knew that there were lots of cherry trees accessible across the city, and they're in your neighborhood, on your street. And so this is a web app that we put together and shared, and shows all of the cherry trees. You can put in your address, it'll tell you within a radius how many cherry trees there are, what species, and where to find them. So part of my work with Urban Forestry Division is outreach. And the reason why that is important is because we are here to serve people. So we take care of the urban forest, but we're really here to help solve problems with trees. And we need to make sure that, of course, people know that we're here. So a lot of the outreach we do is just motivated by the fact that we need to make sure that people know that we are here as an agency to help them, to plant trees if they need that, to maintain trees. And so we attend, this is a street festival, the H Street Festival, and then we also attend other public events like Parking Day. We love to participate in National Park Service events as well, and with other district agencies. And another reason why we need to do community outreach is also just to increase the exposure of trees, just to highlight all of the benefits that we get from trees. So, they add beauty to our neighborhoods, but they're more than that. They're critical infrastructure. They help clean our air. They reduce flooding through stormwater prevention. And then they also cool our neighborhoods. And with climate change, that's becoming ever more important. And then they also reduce anxiety and stress. And of course, this past year, there's been no shortage of that. So we really like to just encourage people to engage with and appreciate trees. And so we posted a couple years ago. So these photos were from 2 years ago. You won't see any masks, but that's because it was a while ago. And so we had an Arbor Day Festival, our first one in Oxon Run Park, to encourage interaction with trees, but also just enjoyment of this great park. It's the largest city-owned park. And so we had tree planting, which is a typical activity you'd find at an Arbor Day Festival. But we have this really cool program, the Urban Wood Reuse Program. We have an urban sawmill, and we worked with a local high school in the city that has a carpentry course to put together these birdhouse kits. And so we took city trees, recycled them, milled them into lumber, and then the students put together these birdhouse kits. And we were able to bring these to the Arbor Day Festival, and we had about 60 families that were able to assemble them and take them home and kind of take nature home with them. And then of course you can't get any closer to a tree than when you're like hugging it and climbing it. So we did have tree climbing as well. And we had planned to continue this festival last year in 2020. And of course, things changed. And so with the public health emergency, we needed to cancel it. And a lot of us, I was working from home, and we were, just interested in finding alternative ways to continue that outreach in a way that was still safe, even though we couldn't assemble, we couldn't have public events and that sort of thing. So, I looked out to see what other cities were doing, and I discovered on the Portland Parks and Rec urban forestry website that they had this concept they were trying out called the PopUp Arboretum. And so I reached out to them and then looked into it, and it seemed like a fun idea. So the idea is that you take an arboretum, so like say our national arboretum here in the city, and you just miniaturize it and you put it into a local city park. And you go out and you choose a dozen of your favorite trees, and they could be large, mature trees, or maybe a rare species that you don't often find, and or maybe common trees. So that's also great because that way people learn trees that they're most likely to encounter in their neighborhood. And then you put a sign on it. So we were interested in trying this out, but we needed to figure out where it would be appropriate. And we had planned to have our Arbor Day at Oxon Run Park. So we looked into that. We also were interested in doing this in a park where we already had an established partnership with community members. And fortunately, we've been able to work with this nonprofit Friends of Oxon Run Park. So you see here, these are the leaders, Commissioner Jordan, and then Brenda Richardson. And this group is a long-running group, and they advocate for their park, and they steward the park, and are always putting on really great activities there. So they invited us to one of their monthly meetings. Actually, we attend them often, but we proposed the PopUp Arboretum. They were very open to it, and they said sure. And of course, we reached out to Department of Parks and Recreation and Watani, because this is their area. So we manage the trees in parks, but we don't really do, that's kind of the only thing that we're doing there in the park. So we wanted to make sure that this is something that Parks and Rec would be interested in having. And so it was pretty simple, kind of low-tech exhibit or installation. We have a sign, and we have 3 components. So we want to, the first goal is to connect people with nature through trees. And so even if they don't read the sign, if they go up to it and then they look at the tree and they see a bird or see a caterpillar on the bark, that's kind of our goal, is just to get people looking and interacting with trees. Secondarily, we also wanted to give some tips for people to identify trees, just some quick tips. Identifying a tree species is important because it gives you a window into that tree, into what characterizes kind of the normal condition of that tree. And so you can recognize, if a particular type of tree, that it should be losing its leaves in the fall, if it's deciduous or not. So we are hoping that people might learn some tips to identify trees. And then lastly, we're interested in just connecting people with trees, and doing that through a personal connection. So again, a lot of our work is focusing on people. So we're serving people through trees. And so trees are used for so many different purposes. So, maple syrup, and there's so many different ways to connect trees to what we do in our daily lives. So the fun thing about this project is that it is low tech. So you can just like print out signs. We have a laminator that helps with weather. And you put the signs out, and it's something that you can do right now during the pandemic because it's self-guided. So people can go out and kind of make their way and kind of do a self-guided tour of trees. But at the flip side, it also makes it challenging because you don't know what people are doing, and you don't know if people are interacting, you don't know if they like it or if they have questions. You can't be there to answer the questions. And so we were really interested in getting feedback. And we were fortunate through Friends of Oxon Run, they connected us to Capital Experience Lab, a nonprofit education group here in the city that they kind of use the city and museums as their classroom. And they were really interested in working on us on that trial run and put together a socially safe way for families, just a couple of families, to come in and view the signs and give us feedback. And Allison Gilmeister at CapEx did a really great job of guiding the families through this. So this is an example of the kind of prototype signs. So we have a sign in English and a sign in Spanish. And here there's a third one. And so we had like a sign about birds, which is great. But the feedback we got was like, what are these? The birds don't match the tree. Like what's happening? So we streamlined it, and we just have the two signs now. But we had some other feedback about just the details that we had on the signs. People were, there's a father and daughter that they recognized the spiky fruit of the sweet gum. They seen that on their street, but they didn't know which tree it came from. And so that was a nice connection for them. And, you know, we had a sassafras tree, which is pretty rare, but it's fun because it has the 3 different leaf shapes. And so that came up as a comment that people had, which was fun. And so some of the additional feedback we had in this kind of trial run period was there's an interest in, you know, if a family is in the park and looking at these signs, what is the next thing they can do? Kind of what's the next step? Can we take something home? Can we do something at home as kind of an extension of the activity? And I've been recommended by a couple of different people to try out a QR code. So that's the little code you see there circled in red. And you know, like Watani had mentioned that they had been using it in DPR a lot, and it will link to more information, which sounded great. But we didn't have more information for it. We didn't have like a website for it yet. So we had to figure out what we would provide for people when they, you know, clicked on that to learn more. And we do have access to, in our work, to a mapping system, to ArcGIS online. And they have this fun, very user-friendly, dynamic platform, the story maps. And we do use those at work. And so I thought, well, I could put together a story map for the PopUp Arboretum. And this is what it looks like. This is basically the tour that you would take of all of the trees. And when you click on one tree, it'll bring up the name, and then, you know, we have some photos, but we don't have, you know, text for each individual tree. We can tell you like the size of it maybe, and when it was planted even, but we needed more information. And so that was where, as Cindy mentioned, I had gotten contact with Smithsonian Gardens because I found they had this plant explorer that was like kind of perfect. It has all of the information you'd ever want to know about like phenology. So like the timing of like when you expect to see flowers and when you expect to see fruit. They have high resolution photos, you know, dozens of them. And this is, so it's just a great resource. And I was really happy that we were able, that Cindy was responsive and that she actually set up a call. And so we were able to talk about using it, and they were very encouraging of us linking. So we basically link to the Plant Explorer, and then it opens up this whole other world of information about individual trees. And so that was an example of, you know, what we did right off the bat, kind of after the lockdown. And last fall, we were starting to think, what do we do about Arbor Day Festival? We can't really plan on having one, and we couldn't. So we thought, well, maybe we could try this pop-up arboretum at a different park. And Langdon Park is another great park in the city. It is home to the Chuck Brown Memorial, father of go-go, and they have a skate park and a dog park and a pool. It's a great park. But I didn't personally have connections to anyone at the park. And I didn't, you know, we don't want to come in and just pop up a bunch of signs and leave because people live there. It's your neighborhood. So I did find out who to talk to. And so there were community members that I got in touch with, and one of them was a commissioner for the Advisory Neighborhood Commission, and they invited me to one of their community monthly meetings. And I did kind of a formal presentation And they were very interested and receptive, but they had very specific things that they wanted. So, for example, they have a 9/11 memorial grove there, and they really wanted to make sure that that was incorporated into this, pop-up arboretum. And we even did a walkthrough. And so they specifically pointed out, okay, this tulip tree, like the one I have shown here, we want that in it. And there were other trees that they were interested in. So I incorporated all of those trees and put together story map for their pop-up arboretum. And this is one of the things that they specifically asked for. So they were interested. They said, this sounds interesting, but you know what I really want to know is I want to know what is the tree in front of my house. I want to know what trees are on my street. And we have all of that information. We have all of our trees mapped. So I included an extra map kind of within this so that you can go in and click on a tree and it'll tell you the type of tree, it'll tell you the size, it might even tell you when we planted it. So there's a lot of information there. And so I mentioned it's one of the challenges of this pop-up kind of concept is that it's kind of remote, it's kind of DIY, you do your own tour. And so it's hard to know how it's being used, but we have had feedback from other agencies like from Watani, from his DPR programs. They have had bird watching where they've incorporated the signs at Oxon Run Park with bird watching and wellness hikes. Friends of Oxon Run is doing a phenomenal job of putting together outdoor education activities each month. And they do it at the amphitheater, which is right where we have the signs. So they're kind of there. And then we also partnered with Capital Experience Lab again to integrate our poetry contest with the Arboretum. And so that's the photo that you see there is Allison is kind of kneeling nearby, and then the families were there kind of making the children making observations of the trees to incorporate into poetry. And then the City Nature Challenge is coming up this weekend, and they'll have some, that's the iNaturalist kind of BioBlitz, and they'll have some activities within the Arboretum, this pop-up Arboretum this weekend. And so in terms of the next steps, this is an example of that kind of poetry activity. We've had a request for a pop-up Arboretum in a community in Southwest DC. And then Watani's mentioned that there are a number of newly renovated parks that would be great options for having a pop-up arboretum to kind of encourage more engagement and activation of those parks. And I think I would also say that it'd be great to collaborate with DC Public Schools and maybe show them how they could make their own pop-up arboretum like on their school campuses if they were interested. So thanks so much. And here's my contact information. And then I'll turn it over to Watani. Okay.
Casey, can you put your contact information in the chat box? That way people will be able to see it on a more extended basis. I appreciate that. Thank you. Mm-hmm. So, Watani,
yep,
how are you?
Much. I'm good. How are you?
Excellent. And Casey, thank you for that presentation. We'll get back with questions to you, but Watani, thank you for joining us today. We appreciate you sharing a deeper story, more story, and showing how you work with the community. And take it away.
All right, let me start sharing my screen with you.
And don't forget to share your picture with us too.
I will not.
Excellent, thank you.
There you go. All right. Thank you so much for the introduction, Cindy. And thank you, Casey, for your presentation. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Watani Hatcher, and I am the manager of the Parks and Environmental Division at the Department of Parks and Recreation. Today, I would like to talk to you about resilience. natural spaces as places of empowerment. When I think of our collections, I think of our parks and recreation facilities. Some old, some new, but our collections all share the same common thread, and that's the community we serve. Here at the Department of Parks and Recreation, our mission is to promote health and wellness, conserve the natural environment, and provide universal access to parks and recreation services. During the pandemic, our mission was flipped on its side, and our original mission became outdated and inoperative, yet our purpose remained intact. As we closed our doors and locked in place, we had to rediscover how to allow our communities to continue to enjoy our spaces. We had a deep desire for our natural areas to continue to be explored. In the midst of the pandemic, our department, in conjunction with members of our community, sought new ways for promoting self-health and wellness. In spite of the lockdown, we pushed forward and increased awareness of our offerings, sparking a new desire of interest, discovery, and adventure. IDA, IDA. IDA gave us a platform to listen to what the communities were desperately in need of. We knew we had to quickly reinvent and improve our access and connectivity to outdoor recreation and natural spaces. There are pockets of wonderful natural spaces sprinkled within our 70 square miles, with a good portion owned by the federal government. With the population approaching 700,000 people, our urbanization in a city of trees expands the entire city, divided into 8 wards. You can only imagine how colorful the request for inclusion can be, from beautiful natural spaces littered with invasive species to our largest park in our inventory decorated with trash and debris. Rivers and streams are demanding to continue their purpose, and that is to flow. As a matter of fact, our natural spaces are all asking the same questions. How will I survive? Who will take care of me? Our parks, natural spaces, our rivers, our streams. Community gardens are also wanting to survive and thrive. Understory trees are wanting to be seen. Rivers in need of restoration and trails are asking for IDA, interest, discovery, and adventure. Fortunately, our Department of Transportation's Urban Forestry Division continues to add to our tree canopy. Our Department of Energy and the Environment continues with their stormwater retention and stream restoration programs. We are seeing our collections thrive once again, therefore increasing the desire to be one with nature, both allowing our systems to breathe in and breathe out, allowing our systems to live. After a year of lockdown, Mother Nature continues forward with her seasons of giving. We are experiencing nature making a comeback, with even wildlife beginning to peer on human-developed spaces. More birds are happily singing their songs, and winged predators soaring through the sky, to families of wildlife ever so making their stake in our city streets. It was as if family dens were being built right in our backyards. With this recent pause in our lives, our ears were open to hear more of what our communities were asking for, from our community gardens to our trails and natural spaces. Let's look at 4 of our current and successful resilient projects. I refer to them as our flagship projects. First is our Pope Branch Trail. In 2019, we put the final touches on our very first unpaved natural trail, Pope Branch Trail. This followed a very huge stream restoration by our Department of Energy and the Environment. This natural space was restored and returned to the community and was ready to be received and programmed out to the surrounding neighborhoods. Understory tree plantings and trail restoration continue to enhance and redefine this trail. With members of the community still needing to connect to nature and still desiring stimulation and entertainment, we regrouped and decided to bring the parks to the community. Our summer entertainment program, Small Parks Music Series, came to fruition. These series are usually met with a variety of audiences in person in the park, but this year we took the concert series to a new level in a virtual format. We chose Pope Branch Trail to be our headliner for our Pope Branch Jams, or PBJs. These series were much appreciated and welcomed by the community. Through my team's creative thinking, the artists found an outlet that they had never experienced. They got, they got to create performances in natural spaces amongst the numerous trees and flowing waters. Presentations that soothe the soul of the listeners and the artists as well. Next is our community gardening at Edgewood Rooftop Farm and Lederer Gardens. Even with shuttered doors, Mother Nature continued pushing forward. My team had already planted seedlings for the upcoming growing season in February. The team started the usual season with producing food for the community. Days spent going to the greenhouses, seeding flats, and potting up, all were moments of continued normalcy as we continue preparing for the growing season. As March approached, we still had to find a way to keep that momentum going, but not with our usual dependable list of volunteers. Instead, we were in isolation. One by one, we took shifts, continuing to care for soon to be food for the community. With my division managing 38 community gardens, 2 greenhouses, 4 partner farms, and our newly installed Edgewood rooftop farm, many who rely on us for growing guidance still needed connectivity. All programs were canceled, but the need for access to our spaces and the need for learning how to grow was still present. We
Hey,
had to,
Watani, I hate to interrupt,
yes.
but the slides aren't moving forward, so I just wanted to make sure
Um,
that you knew that.
okay, thank you for that.
Okay,
I'll
thank
make
you.
sure that is fixed.
Yeah, because I'm sure you have some delightful pictures of the
I
rooftop
do.
garden to share. Thank
All
you.
right, you're welcome. Bottom line, all in person form of guidance had to be virtual and digital. The team quickly converted their time to all online. The only thing that couldn't be virtual was our growing spaces. We had a newly installed rooftop farm at Edgewood Recreation Facility that was only growing weeds and had never been touched by growing hands. My staff knew we had to start planning in our gardens, understanding our greenhouses couldn't sustain the overgrowth of root-bound pots. With the outcry for sources of food, we made the decision to turn our spaces into food distribution sites. Rather than have the front cover perfect photograph of a rooftop garden, we decided it needed to be in full production. We maximized every square footage with planted grapevines, strawberries, lavender, rosemary, collards, kale, spinach, arugula, sun gold and green zebra tomatoes, eggplant, okra, beans, peppers, sunflowers, cleome, celosia, calendula, one pumpkin, chives, and onions, all on a less than a tenth of an acre rooftop farm. During the entire season, we were able to give the community 1 metric ton of food within a 5-month growing season. The community was ecstatic that we were giving back. That week by week, we were once again increasing our volunteers and began to turn into an in-person growing guidance program, something we originally set out for the space to be, a place to engage and inspire, nurture, and harvest. The same couldn't be said in another community that has a farm, Lederer Gardens. Here is a garden that was established as the Robert F. Lederer Community Garden and Environmental Education Center, as well as the MLK Sanctuary. As the community was looking for options to receive supplemental sources of food, current growing conditions wouldn't allow for the production. Any heavy rains or the excessive collection of water only saturated the soil further, making it a desert of inhabitable crops. We knew something needed to change for the betterment of the community. We made the decision to redesign the garden to restore this as a production site, part of our communal farm program. The installation of French drains and the building upper earth were all instituted. We called on our volunteers to join us with the restoration of this site, and with that, we can say so far so good, with much admiration from our soon-to-be residents of the Lederer Community Garden. 20 community garden plots, a greenhouse, and growing guidance course. It is our goal to mirror the efforts from our rooftop farm and create several metric tons of food, providing the community with healthier options they are unable to find within a square mile. Third is our Oxon Run Park. Oxon Run Park is located in Ward 8 and is the largest park in our inventory, once ignored and neglected. However, we were approached by long-standing leaders in the community that wanted a change. They wanted to create a Friends of group, individuals who have been passionate about their park for many years. We listened and took immediate action, and within months, we had a Friends of Oxon Run partnership that helped to bring forth new life into this forgotten gem. Working with Casey from the Urban Forestry Department, we realized immediately that the community wanted to make a difference, and we needed to give the community what they requested. The first ask was to create a memory forest as a place to peacefully recall and call the names of those slain by gun violence. Mothers of these victims wanted to have a lasting footprint, and we had to deliver. We planted redbuds, sweet bay magnolias, and Kosa dogwoods. Outdoor learning and education are the keys for community engagement. The next ask, sorry about that. The next ask was to recreate a vision that once was. The Ward 8 community has always felt absent from recognition during the National Cherry Blossom Festival, although they have the second largest collection of cherry blossoms outside of the National Mall. We wanted to call the action the Day of Celebratory Cherry Blossom Festival in a park that was always felt like Ward 8's own. I am pleased to inform you that the park will be enhanced with future cherry tree plantings that continue to mirror the ones on the National Mall in all sections of the park. We have also enriched this space by taking on a unique partnership with DC Greens. The Well will be producing a state-of-the-art sustainable agricultural experience. In Oxon Run, we will be creating a farm-to-table and art-to-home space where residents can learn how to grow and maintain crop production for food distribution to a space where a community can thrive with aspiration and inspiration. This project is slated for groundbreaking in the summer and ribbon cutting in the spring of 2022. Finally, the Palisades Recreational Trail. We have communities that have cleared vast areas of open space to reveal an area that once was a gathering place, some 40 years to 100 of years ago. We found remnants of old establishments asking to connect to our newfound world. In partnership with DPR, the Palisades community created a new hiking trail and a new outdoor art exhibit hidden from the eyes of the average traveler. The space has been transformed as a new retreat, creating a new natural space for a wandering traveler. No longer hidden is the rich area of heritage, exposing a hillside community that once linked DC to the C&O Canal and Chain Bridge Road. To further celebrate this process, a decision was made to add to the ongoing story of this new defined space. Our urban forestry division agreed that several tree-laden stories could be presented and represented in this space. With this partnership, we will be adding to the story of the vast wilderness area. In closing, we have gained a new outlook to what should be a place of community resilience. Meeting in these spaces, engaging with nature, and opening up to the community, we now look up, our canopy is growing, and a new foundation is being built, offering our stakeholders the opportunities to make a difference. We want everyone to feel welcome and to explore these spaces we value as places of wellness, self-reflection, and personal growth. Thank you.
Thank you, Watani. You're both very inspirational. Thank you so much for the work that you do. And I am encouraged to see that you have many of the same challenges that we do at Smithsonian Gardens and many of the same approaches that I think other communities could learn from that really help out your projects. And that's it. You went to your communities first and you asked what the communities wanted. You've stayed in touch with the communities. You've adapted to what their needs are and what they desire. The projects have all grown because you're listening to your communities. Can you tell us more about how do you reach out? How did you talk to the communities? Did you have meetings? What did you do to be able to initiate the engagement with your communities? I'll throw the popcorn ball.
Okay, so I'll answer part of that. And thank you, Watani. That was great photos. So the one pop-up at Langdon Park, that was a new park, kind of a new park to me. I actually used to, work as an urban forester in Ward 7 and 8. So I was more familiar with parks, Oxon Run Park in Ward 8. For Langdon Park, I reached out to my coworkers. So all of my coworkers, there's about 30 of us that are working as urban foresters. They are out assigned to specific areas in the city. And so they spend a lot of time in those communities. And when you're out walking around looking at trees, people talk to you. And so my coworkers had those connections. And I asked, who do I talk to? Do you know of community members? And they said, sure, here's like 2 or 3 people. I reach out to all of them and they were all really responsive and requested a walkthrough, requested me to come and formally present to their advisory neighborhood commission monthly meeting. So I did that. And they were really great because I was new. I was just, to them, I was new, we hadn't met before. And so that was great. And, they've continued to invite me to the meetings like for updates and hopefully they are out enjoying the park now. Thanks.
That's great. Watani, how about you? How do you engage with the community and figure out what they need, what they want?
Yeah, so it's amazing. So I've been in this position actually, what's today's date? For a year. I've been in this position for a full year. Prior to coming to this position, I was the assistant to the director. So I had already known a lot of the folks in the community. So it was an easy transition for me because as soon as I stepped into this role, I immediately reaching out to folks in the community and they sort of connected me to some of the organizations that are already out here doing great work. So it was almost as if it was organic. And that's one of the things that's so great about working in the environmental sciences is things are so organic. We tend to all be intertwined in the work that we do. So meeting people is just easy because you may hear their name, you may see their faces, but it makes it so much easier to connect.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so with that, we have with some of our natural spaces being connected to our recreation facilities, people always have a great way of connecting with the rec center. And because of my great relationship with my internal staff, it just makes it so much easier to pass the baton and go forward with helping the community.
Yeah, I get so many emails from people because of this series, and it's great. I feel like I finally am listening to a greater amount of people, but they ask, well, how did you start this? How did you do this? I said, well, I can tell you how I did it, but you're both proof is you have to go to the community to find out what they want, what you're going to be able to do. Because we can steal ideas for projects. The Pop-Up Arboretum is a great project to steal, but then how do you make it relate to your community? And Casey, you did something that I always encourage people to do is to evaluate what you're doing so that you put those families in the arboretum and had them read the labels and then um, guide you to what information you're going to make available. So did somebody asked, was it, how did you engage the children? Was there one thing that they were more interested than others? And like the sassafras leaves with the mitten and everything. So how did you work with them to find out what they wanted out of it?
Yeah, so fortunately, I had relied on the expertise of others. So I was working, so Capital Experience Lab, they are, they're educators. And so Allison Gilmeister, she led the activity, and she had a very clear guide to, stepwise for what we were going to do. And just asked the families and the children to make observations. They had a worksheet, and they were actually filling everything out. And then I was there as kind of the expert on trees, and described what I see, what an urban forester sees when they look at a tree. Um, and so so relying on the expertise of others who are like educators is really helpful,
Yeah, and
important for
just
us.
relying on others, I think. Don't try to recreate every single wheel that you do. And I think you're both great examples of that. You go to a group, what we have to offer might be this much of your project. What Tani had to offer might be this much of your project, and vice versa. And together, you're using multiple areas of resources to come up with a great final project. So that's a great experience to share and lesson to learn that people can work with, because we all have this much that we can share. Our bandwidth isn't great, but we can share this much. So here's a great question. Watani, you might be perfectly suited to answer this. Do you have conflicts between the nature education uses of parks and sports and rec uses of parks?
So interesting. I was actually going to respond to Mr. Ross's question. Not at this moment. I think a lot of our natural areas don't have fields.
Mm,
So there is not quite a conflict just yet. Hopefully we can really push some more outdoor learning, and then that's where we might see some of the conflict.
mhm.
But as of now, we don't really have conflict with a lot of our sports um, recreating in our outdoor spaces.
Well, that's good to know. But be prepared. You might now look for other sources. I've worked in gardens before that it's a wonderful place to walk a dog, but maybe it's not the best place to walk a dog. So we'd always have information on where our visitors could go to walk their dog, and that way you're prepared.
Yeah, we now we do have that conflict. So yes, we are definitely working on fixing that conflict because people are looking for places to actually walk their dogs.
Hmm. And it's okay
It's
for
okay. We
partial,
love it.
but yeah, we do. Um, it says, okay, here's the question. What was the conversation like for changing the focus of the garden at Leader?
Wow, thank you for that question. Yeah, so what was that conversation like? Interesting. So I actually had a video that I would have loved to have shared with everyone. So hopefully when we do the recap, we can slip that video in. But the conversation with Letterer was really with my staff. Well, let me back up. It was really with my disappointment of going to the site and seeing when it rained for about an inch that there was an entire field of flooding. I think I showed that in the slide where you can see that it was just completely destroyed. So you can imagine not many of our fruiting crops were not able to have that growth. Um, so it was disappointing. Then we had the director come and he did a walkthrough with us, and he was amazed at what that space looks like. And
Mm.
I said, we need to do a better job. We need to find a way to offer a better opportunity for the members of the community. So we sat down with the staff and we just said, okay, what can be done to make this a success? So we're fighting against Mother Nature here because there is a natural trend for the water to go into the stream. So we had to fight that sort of
Mm.
downhill motion and create these French drains that go the opposite direction. So we're hoping, we just installed it. So we're hoping the French drains will help with some of the water. We also took it upon ourselves to actually build up the earth. So we dug sort of trenches and we put tons of topsoil
Mm.
on top of these mounds in hopes to see a difference. So this is our first time doing it in a very long time. So we're hoping to see some great success with it.
I hope you do too. It sounds
Yes,
like you've taken some positive steps. I think the most positive step is to understand that you are accountable for correcting those challenges and being able to be responsible for correcting the challenges. And I think that's the most important thing that we can do as nonprofits, to look to see, maybe we've overextended. What can we do to pull back and to help some of the areas that we've already started? So I also want to, we, one of our biggest populations for these programs are Master Gardeners. And we hear from Master Gardeners from all over the nation. But specifically, have you worked with the Master Gardeners in your area? And if so, what kind of help could you uh, want to receive from the Master Gardeners? Because they're very defined in what they're doing. They're providing education for their community.
absolutely. Being a master gardener myself,
Mm,
we understand
congratulations.
yes, thank you. We understand the importance of volunteerism and really giving back to the community. So something we're looking to do is actually grow our partnership with the Master Gardeners program, including the Master Naturalist program.
Mm-hmm.
There are two opportunities out there that I think we need to tap into a little bit better. So we definitely plan on doing that within the next couple of weeks or so. Now that we're changing sort of our involvement with engaging everyone, we're hoping to get back on track with a lot of
That sounds great. And Casey, I think you did mention that you work with Master Naturalist for some of your projects.
Um, we are hoping to. So,
Okay.
in a couple different ways. Yeah, one of the community members actually is a master gardener, or master naturalist herself, who around Langdon Park, and so she's reached out to me about helping out install the next pop-up arboretum and putting signs on trees. When you have a tree that's wider than you can put your arms around, it's hard to get that sign there. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so we might be working with them on this. And we have some forest health and studies that we are thinking would be a good fit for the volunteer hours for
Mm-hmm.
the master naturalists. And I'm in touch with those folks from the University of District of Columbia.
That is such good advice. to know what the mission of the other nonprofit may be, and not trying to get them to go outside of what their expertise is, but to hone in working with them on their expertise and what they're set out to do. So you're not trying to get them to change to apples, you're leaving them be oranges, and do it that way. So that's great. This is a great question too. How about, is there a specific size for a pop-up arboretum that you think would work best?
Uh, I think it really depends on the size of your park, but I think, it maybe 8 or 10 trees. We've had 14, but we might have a little less on some. And you can always add more later. So one of our parks, Marvin Gaye Park, is along a creek. And so we'll be installing one, but it's a short area. And in the future, we might add on to it. So it really just depends on what your needs are and how big your area is.
Well, I also wanted to, you talked about wanting to make connections with schools to do pop-up arboretums at schools. That is such a great idea, because so many schools have fallen into, oh, we have to have a school garden. We have to. A school garden is a lot of work. It's a lot of work. And the crops that are grown aren't necessarily there the same time the students are there. So I have encouraged people, too many years, I don't want to tell you how long, that would give away my age, but create an arboretum at your school. Many times the resources are already there. The shrubs are there, the trees are there, and if it's not on the campus per se, maybe it is in the neighborhood that you could create it. It's so much fun for the students to research those trees and shrubs, find out what the backstories are for them, create journals to go along with them. I know this because I did it with my son in his school, and it was such a great way. They wanted me to put in a garden, and working full time and putting in a garden, no. But a pop-up arboretum, what a great school project. Think how much you can dig into the subject. Sorry, couldn't let that go. But we only have about 3 minutes left. I'm looking to see if, how do you make the signage weatherproof without spending a fortune? So you gave us one idea.
Yeah, so we basically laminate the signs, and we have the original ones that we put up in Oxon Run Park have been there since December. So they've weathered pretty well. We put a foam backing on them, but if you have a big enough tree, or if you have a stake, you could just staple it onto the stake. So we do that for some of the young trees that we don't really want to attach anything to.
And for temporary signs, we often at Smithsonian Gardens use a product called centerboard, and it's like the foam backing that you're talking about. So it's easy, and then we buy sticky paper and do the same thing that you're doing. So it works out really well. But I want to thank you both. I look forward to the opportunity to working with you as much as we can, and we know that's a little bit, but I really appreciate you sharing your stories, sharing your information, and I hope you've inspired many of our audience members to go out, see what they can do for their community. Don't necessarily tell them. Don't follow exactly what you both are doing, but find out what your community needs, and then look for the resources that will help you out. Thanks for all. We'll see you next week. We appreciate it greatly. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you.
Bye, Casey.
Bye, Tanya. See you.
All right, see you soon.